All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's August 3rd, 2022. My name's Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation here from Copenhagen. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator. That means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building it together with your teams and showing them the ropes. So if you want to find out what that looks like, book a call with me. Go to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. We'll go through your situation and figure out if we can help you out. For those of you new to the call, the format today is very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered, so feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. If you're tuning in from our YouTube channel or podcast, you can register for these live and interactive sessions by going to cloudposse.com/officehours. Again, that's cloudposse.com/officehours, and we'll send you an invite to our weekly call. We host these calls every week. This call today is recorded and will automatically post a recording of our session today to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy this content and really want to support what we're doing here, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. It helps us out a great deal. So let's get into some quick announcements. After that, we'll follow it up with a Q&A. Main announcements here that caught my attention this week. One was shared by none other than Vlad. Tinder's security team has come out with a Medium post on how they are auditing actions and use there and things to watch out for. Now, this is a pretty brief post all in all on the things to look out for. I haven't had a chance to scan it yet, so I think we'll talk more about it maybe on another call. The gist of it is that it's a wild, wild west out there. If you're using any platform, not just GitHub Actions, but where you have shared actions that can run in your environment, there's a lot of opportunity for exploitation and supply chain attacks. And this will go over some of those. Vlad, are you on the call today?
Yep. Hey, Eric.
Do you want to add anything to this? Because you probably perused it a little bit closer than I had a chance to.
I didn't, so this is an announcement from today. I didn't have any chance to go deeper on it, but in the past I implemented something very similar to this. So I'm excited because Tinder open sourced their implementation. Hopefully it's gonna become more popular. Somebody on Twitter was mentioning that it would have been interesting for this to be like SemGrep or OPA roles around the validation rules, and that would have been interesting, but I don't know. I haven't had the time to look into it, but I like what I've seen until now. I'll deep dive into this weekend.
They've open sourced a action in particular to watch or look out for some of these things,
So
or
Python CLI, there's a link somewhere in there to the thing. Let me find it. Copy link, paste it in the Zoom chat.
all right. What do we got here? GitHub Workflow Auditor, a script to audit GitHub Action workflow files for potential vulnerabilities. All right. Well, yeah, it's gonna require a little bit more digging
Yeah, some
here.
pattern matching with Python basically to, well, that's mean of me. Let's not undersell what they built here, but it's basically pattern matching and roles with Python on the code. It's like, oh, for some reason you're sending the GitHub token to an HTTP API. That's weird. Don't do that.
This sounds like something for Muhaha to check out and come back with a TLDR. All right. The next one was just a brief announcement. Another search engine, sayhello.so, tailored towards developers. I don't know how well it is in practice. I just did some fun testing on it the other day. It was like Terraform, AWS EC2 instance, how to yeah, I was able to answer that very, very simple question that we could probably find in other ways as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how effective it is for more difficult questions than that. Has anyone kicked the tires and say hello more on this?
I read just a little that they're using like natural language processing and doing a bunch of like artificial intelligence things behind the scenes to try to put it all into context and surface the most relevant answers. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah,
but it looks promising.
It's somewhere in between what GitHub's doing with Copilot and being able to auto-suggest code versus a search engine where it helps you just narrow down the results to what you're trying to do. And
it's like Stack Overflow on steroids, basically.
Yeah. All right. Next one, if you've been using a lot of GitHub Actions, and if you are, you're probably using them ephemerally, it's been annoying that you can have just a list of 100 instances in the UI on GitHub. They're addressing that. GitHub is addressing that now. So off the bat, they're reducing the time that instances stay online, but show up in the UI from 30 days to 2 weeks, 14 days, and then for ephemeral ones, just 1 day. So that should clean up that a little bit. But I think this should be even more configurable because 1 day can still be a lot.
Yeah, it'd be nice if they added this to the API so you could actually call it and say
deregister,
and give
right?
it, yeah, or give it. Well, you can deregister like explicitly, but from the runner itself. But if you had a call that said delete all runners that haven't connected in X number of minutes, days, whatever, and you could just call that endpoint, that would be useful.
Yeah. Oh, let's see, zipping through these a little too quickly here. The next announcement was Atlantis related. So there's a pull request opened up. Gosh, this pull request, this is not the original pull request. The original one was done like, I forget when, but like over a year ago or two. For these plan and apply endpoints. Looks like Pepe Amengual opened up a new PR and this one got merged. So that's cool. What's nice about this is now there's a /plan and /apply API endpoint for Atlantis. So you can do integrations, perhaps with GitHub Actions, for example. And the original use case for this was drift detection. So if the /plan endpoint existed, it'd be possible to, for example, have a cron in GitHub Actions trigger each of your projects and see if there's drift. So this is something that you get today with things like Spacelift or Terraform Cloud and probably other of the Taco providers. Now you can do, albeit not with Atlantis directly, you have to use another system to do that. Has anybody already kicked the tires on this? This is, by the way, this was released only in a pre-release, but there is a binary for it, so you can start kicking tires on it. All right. Next announcement was just something brief, caught my eye. I couldn't believe that you couldn't already enforce this, but now you can. So for compliance reasons, you probably want to enable this stat so that you can only accept TLS encrypted connections to your MySQL database. Well, now that's possible. To enforce it, that is. It's been impossible with TLS for a long time. All right, any other announcements? Things that caught your eye this past week?
I did see that the performance of CloudWatch metrics increased like 100-fold or something like that. I saw they just announced that you can now send, I think you can send up to 1,000 metric collections in a single like API post now, and the number of and the number of dimensions you can have is also like expanded significantly. So looks like they're doing some stuff to tweak their monitoring tooling now.
All right, let's get into the next or the first question then. One of the questions was asked in sweetops in the Terraform channel earlier this week, got a lot of replies. I was just curious if anybody had any creative solutions to this, because so far it wasn't really answered and it seemed like something solvable. So it's kind of a question around introspection. If you're using Terraform, how would you, inside your Terraform code, determine the version of Terraform that's being run right now? And seems like, and then the same person who asked it said without using data external. So obviously, I guess if you use data external, and you could call out, shell out to Terraform that's in your environment path and get the version. But I guess there's no other way, right? There's no, I was almost surprised there isn't a variable exported for this. Like if you're running in Spacelift or Terraform Cloud, I believe, if you're running in N0, most of the Taco platforms will expose to the current version of Terraform that's being run as an environment variable, and then you could probably access that somehow. But not, I guess, any other way. Any clever solutions here?
I would
I was following
imagine
this thread. Sorry. Yeah, I was following this thread, but yeah, I was shelling out to Terraform, passing out or passing the variable, passing the version in as a variable, and then using it as a variable inside the code. But again, yeah, you're relying on your environment as opposed to some data source that Terraform provides.
Yeah. Be a nice use case for like a Terraform provider that just added some more introspection there. One of the I think use cases here was to add a tag to the resources being provisioned of the version of Terraform that was used to provision that resource.
Yeah, I thought that I thought for sure that there was a like, you know, how you have the TF_CLI splat variables. I thought one of those actually was had the version in it, but I'm trying to find the reference right now, and I can't actually find it. But I thought for sure that there was a version in there somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking earlier, I couldn't find anything. Oh well, that was what that was on. So just in case anyone had any clever ideas or seen any Terraform, I was really curious if anybody's seen a Terraform provider basically that did that. All right, the next question was asked here was by Dave Gregory. Dave, are you on the call today?
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome, awesome. So you posted earlier, you're embarking on a mission to decompose a small number of shared monolithic AWS accounts into a larger number of like workload focused AWS accounts. Naming obviously is hard. Feels like every account workload stage needs an expressive string to embed in its resource name. So when you're referencing those resources across accounts, it's easy to see what it is without needing to parse account IDs. Totally agree with you. And that string needs to be short because resource names are constrained in length. And it needs to be expressive so it helps humans who are looking at it, and unique so that there's disambiguation and not conflicts. Things like S3 buckets, for example, need to be globally unique in the AWS namespace. So you are thinking about that right. This is something that we have solved in all of our modules and that we use today. So if you're using Terraform and you're not using Cloud Posse's null label module, then you're in for more hurt than necessary. Are you already familiar with the null label module before I go into what it is for everyone else?
somebody linked it in reply to my post, so I had a look and it looks amazing, exactly like what I needed.
Okay, cool. So what we've done is we provided a standard set of variables here that you'll pass in. And if you use these consistently everywhere, you'll get properly disambiguated resource names in a consistent way across all of your environments. But there are some considerations that you should take into to mind when you're going through this. Let me just pull up this is our internal documentation on what that is. So that would be namespace, for example. So when you're thinking about the namespace for your organization, this is the first 3 letters typically of what we would have in the resource name generated by null label. And you'd want to pick something unique there, ideally not too long because it's going to be in every single name. Our recommendation is usually somewhere in the order of 3 to 4 letters long. And here you can kind of see some examples of that. Now, this is what's going to help ensure that optimistically speaking, you're not going to have collisions. Now, anybody else who uses that same prefix, and the more customers out there using no label, the more likely, I guess, those collisions will be. But this has worked really well for us and almost never had any collisions. The other consideration that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to embed the region. If you ever want to go multi-region, it's better to do that from day one. Let's see, decide on regional naming scheme. So this is where we have a few different conventions. So we are using environment for this and no label. It is not the conventional way that companies and developers use environment. We agree with that. We're just using it because we didn't want to introduce another field at this time to no label. We are planning on adding a location field to no label so that this is a first class property. But the idea here is that you can't use just the regular region that Amazon gives you because it's hyphenated already. And then you have this kind of this ambiguity where sometimes regions have 1 hyphen, sometimes they have 2 hyphens. So you really don't have a consistency of your resource names. Plus it's very long, so it eats up a lot of characters. So you should use one of either a 3-letter fixed code, as we call them, or a 4-letter, 3 to 4 letter, or 4 to 5 letter short code. I believe these are the canonical region codes that Amazon has. And then we came up with an even shorter version here. So if you're interested in using what we came up with, you can find those in a Terraform module that we have. It's called Terraform AWS Utils. And in this Terraform module, we've come up with a coding scheme here to consistently map all of these regions and zones to a short code. We were hoping to be able to do it entirely programmatically, but we couldn't. There are some inconsistencies, so therefore we maintain this list explicitly. But it's public, it's versioned, and it handles every AWS region that we know about to date that we've come across.
Love it. Thanks. I got as far as realizing I needed to shrink it and realizing that AWS had canonical shorter region names, but you just saved me a bunch of effort again.
Yeah, it's at least worth looking at for seeing how we solved it, whether or not you use it or not, choose what works for you. We do come across regions and things, new regions and zones, as we work with different customers and keep this up to date and do accept pull requests as well. So feel free to contribute anything missing. Anyone have something to add to this question before we move on, specifically around handling account names and resource names in a diverse AWS environment? All right. Next question was another one. I don't believe we answered, but it was a very popular thread in the AWS channel this past week. And I'm also just personally curious on what the best approach is to solving this. So Patrick McDonald has a unusual situation with a customer of his. They manage many remote sites and have physical devices up to 20 at each location. I read that as being like IoT devices or somewhat untrusted devices. Each device needs to send metrics to CloudWatch and upload files to S3, and they currently have hard-coded static credentials, like in a AWS credentials file. Obviously, that's not desirable, as those could leak and it's hard to rotate them. So he would like to move them to an IAM model where they use temporary STS type credentials. The ask is, if a device gets compromised, how can we disable access to AWS from that particular device? I was thinking to use an IAM role per device. However, we're expecting 10,000 devices and you can't have that many roles. So, how would you solve this situation? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a couple of ideas. So you could use a combination of API Gateway and Cognito to do this. So with API Gateway, you essentially would get an API token that each of the devices could have, and it could be unique, so that they can call API Gateway, the endpoint on API Gateway, to exchange that token through Cognito for temporary AWS credentials. And then they get temporary AWS credentials that give them the right stuff to upload to S3. And if that device is ever compromised, you basically just kill that API key on the API Gateway, and then you can issue it a new API key, basically, so that it can use to then call to get credentials.
Am I remembering correctly that in the AWS config, you can have a credential helper that helps you get those credentials?
Yes, you can even write one yourself if you want to go to 1Password or something like that, or anything.
Nice. So therefore, I think what you suggest is probably one of the better ways. You go a roundabout way. You have your own API endpoint that will issue these STS credentials. Because I'm guessing they can't modify maybe their apps. Like if their app can't be modified to call API Gateway directly, and they just want to continue using AWS credentials, then this is why I bring that up.
Yeah. So that definitely is one way to do it. If you do have control over publishing a new version of the app, the better way is actually programmatically getting the credentials and calling S3, like in without having to deal with AWS credentials files or anything like that. You just do it using the AWS SDK under the hood. You can make all these calls basically to do all those things. But yeah, you're definitely right. You could use credentials helper to do that as well.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea, because then you can also do a lot of other things with that API Gateway in that process as you grow. Anyone else have some suggestions?
I see that Mark Tamsky suggested like X.509 certs. Clearly, that is another way to go, but then you also like maintaining a public key infrastructure for tens of thousands of devices is not all it's cracked up to be either. That's a giant pain in the butt. And you got to make sure that everything you're doing along the chain like supports like certificate revocation and a bunch of other things that isn't easy, and that definitely would mean you would need to modify your application to use certificates for all of this rather than directly using the AWS SDK or AWS CLI, whatever they're doing. So
now the other requirement is being able to revoke a particular session. Would that be easy to do in this model?
Yeah, you can. You know what device the API key is issued to, so you literally just disable the API key, and at that point, it's dead. Like it can't make a call anymore. So just to be clear, Eric, what I was suggesting before was that you could, using API gateway, like you can actually proxy like S3 through API gateway. So like they don't even have to talk to S3 directly. Like you can actually proxy the service. That's one of the supported things that API gateway will do. So like when you're doing like your put, like you know, a post or a put like up to that API gateway, it would actually, under the hood, it would actually write the files to S3 for you, etc. So you don't even need to directly use S3, but that requires application changes.
Yeah, application changes, which would be the concern there. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and Mark, AWS definitely does have its own certificate authority and tools around managing and issuing the 509 X.509 certs, all that kind of thing. It's definitely not the easiest way to do all this stuff. It gets pretty complex with certificate signing and all that kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's another suggestion for sure.
I'm not sure I'd agree with that. There's IoT Core. I pasted 2 links in the Zoom chat. They, assuming they can modify the app a tiny bit or they can architect for it, IoT Core is a really good and mature service that can do this. And they offer a lot more things than if you would implement it yourself with random creating role and API gateway. I used this a while ago, so I don't quote me on anything, but it's perfect for this. And the blog post tackles exactly uploading a file to S3. And the second link I pasted are the different options for actually registering devices. Like, okay, can you put certificates on the devices? Can you not put certificates on the devices, and so on? Oh, it was the first link, Eric. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, AWS has a lot of IoT services. The naming is a bit weird. I don't fully remember this, but they also have some MQTT things that are hidden under IoT and that I used without IoT. But IoT Core is awesome, and you were specifically talking about revoking access. A really nice thing is, so in IoT Core, you have things, like that's literally what a device is called, and you can create shadow devices. So for example, if a device hasn't connected to AWS in a while, you can still pretend to work with that device. So when it finally comes up, it like downloads updates, or it realizes everything is revoked, or you can handle that. It's a pretty nice service, so I'd look into that.
That's a good suggestion, especially since they're working in this IoT context. Yeah, it makes sense. Cool.
Yeah, I think the excuse me, the things there, some of the things there have to do. I know when I looked into this again, my knowledge is a little dated, but I know some of it depended on what the operating system was of the IoT, basically the device, the thing, whether or not you could install, I think you alluded to it at the beginning, whether you can install certificates or get the full SDK loaded, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all good suggestions depending on what the end device actually is. You know, you can investigate several of these things.
All right, let's see. Next question would be, just a brief one. Well, I was wondering about adding some missing EFS Terraform resources. If we don't support it, it's probably just we haven't gotten to it. It was a requirement from one of our customers to date. This sounds like the type of thing we would totally accept a pull request from. Your best bet, if you want to avoid, any unnecessary work, would be to sync with someone like Jeremy on my team or Matt Calhoun on my team and propose the changes, which it seems like you've somewhat done here and providing an example. What we're mostly concerned about would be what would the interface to this change be, and would it be a breaking change and require a migration path? If it doesn't require any migration path, there's very low risk for us to accept it. So your chances of getting it merged are very high. And it looks like it's already got a lot. This was opened 8 days ago, and it's already got 8 upvotes. So sounds like it would be a popular feature. So Maha, if you can definitely open a pull request for that, we would be happy. And it doesn't look like you were able to make the call today. All right. Next question was, yeah, so this was a good one. I thought it was apropos because we spoke at length about the various patterns for deployment to Kubernetes last week. So this was just I think a good sanity check on that. So last week we talked about 2 different deployment methods, one kind of being CI or CD driven operations directly from, GitHub Actions or Circle or something like that. And when you do that, then those systems need direct access to the cluster and probably need permissions to create and destroy namespaces and pretty much do anything possible with that Kubernetes cluster. And that's a security concern for larger organizations, at least. So the question here is regarding GitOps, without going into too much detail, I use GitHub Actions and have a structure of how our applications and environments are organized in the repositories. Applications publish charts and Terraform modules. Environment repositories use those in addition to environment-specific configurations. Everything is automated. The infrastructure in the Kubernetes resources state is located as code in the environment repositories. There's a lot of reusability with GitHub Actions. There's some few cool custom features like automatic conversion of Terraform outputs to Helm values, automatic blue-green deployments for Kubernetes versions, and others. So it seems like he's really gone out of his way to make a nice workflow. Because of GitHub Actions, I don't have to deploy, manage, troubleshoot, fix anything myself. I don't have to worry about scalability. Multi-tenancy is achieved by creating additional environment tenant repositories and updating the configuration. So his question is, hey, do I still need Flux and Argo, given that we've accomplished all this with just straight up GitHub Actions? And would it be worth the self-managing, scaling, troubleshooting, migration efforts of switching? So short answer is, always it depends. And it's like, do you need to add the complexity of Argo and Flux just because, somebody says to? No, you don't need to do it at all. And I mean, what I don't like about adding WeaveWork Flux or ArgoCD into the mix is it becomes a little bit more asynchronous. When a deployment is complete, it's not as obvious. It's yet another tool in the critical path. And if we're talking about ArgoCD, there are things I don't like about it, which is like, it's kind of like Jenkins in the sense that you only have one master for ArgoCD. And if you install or need to upgrade a plugin, it has to kill everything that's running, just like in Jenkins. So it's kind of sucks in that point when you have it. But what it's solving, though, is a different problem. And it might not be a requirement in your situation. So in your system, your CI system or your CD system has direct connectivity to your Kubernetes cluster. But ideally from a security perspective, you would have somewhat like a firewall in place there. And that's what you're getting with this Flux or Argo. They call it, I think WeaveWork coined this term, a change firewall or immutability firewall. That's what they called it. So by having everything just interface via GitHub or a VCS, you have a record of every change, and you can very easily revert any change so the cluster is back to precisely the previous point. So in that sense, I think it's an elegant solution. It also means that you can have the cluster poll for events. So the cluster might not even have direct connectivity from the public internet. And the only way to affect change is to be able to affect change in that version control system. Plus, all the checks and balances you can do on that version control system, including code owners and branch protections and so forth. So Let's see the next question here. Was anybody using, Flux, Argo? What are the pros and cons? I think I implicitly answered some of those. And anybody migrated from GitHub Actions to Flux and Argo? And the truth is, you don't necessarily migrate from. It's just another tool in the chain that you have together with this. So you're still going to be using GitHub Actions. It's just that now your GitHub Actions, the deployment step would be committing to a deployment repository, and then Argo or Flux would be synchronizing that to the cluster. So I guess it would be an evolution of what you've developed here, and it wouldn't necessarily undo all that hard work that you've already done. Gabriel, I'm not sure if you were on the call today. Does not seem like he was able to make it. But that's fine. Anyone else have something to add to this? If you have a beautiful CI/CD process working in GitHub Actions, you're totally happy with it. Should you still be looking, for Flux or Argo?
Well, as you know, I am looking at Flux and Argo right now, and I met with Chris, our architect, my boss today, and he was pushing back hard on the asynchronous aspect. He also has like a big thing about pulling rather than pushing. So, that comes into it too. He likes the fact that Spacelift, which is now where these Helm deploys are happening, visibly dies and gives you some place to look. Whereas from what I can tell, it's less connected, as you said. It's more asynchronous with these with things like Argo and Flux. So that is definitely a consideration. How does it fit into your workflow? What are people expecting in terms of being able to evaluate, you do forensics and debug and stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, for chiming in on that. All right, if nothing else, I guess we'll move on to any other questions. That's all that I had prepared. Let's see what if there's any questions in the Zoom chat that we didn't get to today.
I was just going to add a little color to the first question. I was looking at, your whole thing was like, is there a provider that does this somewhere?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this seems like it would be simple. And then I actually just went and looked, and the provider schema, like the plugin schema that gets initialized and that all the providers are built off of, doesn't actually include the version of Terraform that's running anywhere in the metadata. So I think the only way you would be able to do it in a provider would be to shell out to the OS to then call the binary to then figure out what version it is. So it doesn't seem like an easy problem to solve. And I'm guessing there's a reason that the Terraform core developers didn't do this, because they think it's going to be abused somehow with if statements or whatever based on hard-coded versions, and they made it not easy to do. So
that's probably what it is. Also, one Tamsky had something he posted here earlier, I didn't see, which was, what if you look, does the user agent have any information in there of the Terraform version? And I thought that was kind of a clever idea, maybe.
The user agent that downloads the...
Well, if you're using the built-in methods to make HTTP requests within Terraform, does the user agent that Terraform populates have any version information?
Oh, maybe. But then...
And that was just one idea.
Yeah, I guess then you'd have to
yourself and then inspect it.
Yeah, exactly. So in a yak shaving way, start a little micro HTTP server in your Terraform provider and have it. No, I'm joking.
Or just publish a REST endpoint that you can call with that thing that returns your Terraform version.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, that would be an easy way then, right? Then you wouldn't need to do anything, right? Just say any REST endpoint that returns a JSON serialized version of the HTTP request, and then you can probably extract it if it's there.
Yeah, if it's there, exactly.
Would that be extra flexion?
That's
I'm not
yeah.
sure. I was
But
trying to think
another
if
way to
there-
look at it,
Yeah,
though, to
get
look
the
at it, though, to look at it, though, to
exfiltration.
look at it, though, to 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 look at
Can you
it, though,
mute
to
You
him?
look
gotta
at it, though,
mute
to
him,
look at it,
Eric.
though, to look at it, 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 though, to look.
That was weird. Oh, you muted yourself,
To look
Eric.
at it, though, to look 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 at it.
I muted everyone, so whoever, I don't know who that was, but let's see. All right. Let's see. Any other questions that we didn't get to today?
How mature is the Terraform provider for Oracle Cloud infrastructure? Anybody?
I believe that's the only way you can provision infrastructure on Oracle Cloud. So I think that's actually the canonical way for you to spin up Oracle infrastructure. So I think that that's pretty mature and pretty well tested. That's the way that they do it.
And they rely, like, didn't they do like a Terraform first approach or something almost with that? Or they have
That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
Like the
yeah,
canonical way, if you want to spin up a new server, you don't go to like a console and click like new. You actually use Terraform to spin up a new server.
yeah.
Nice.
One
I'm
second,
liking
guys,
it.
gotta open the door.
Although some other news I've been reading about Oracle is that Oracle's going through a huge round of layoffs right now, and managers have been prohibited from having group meetings with any of their teams, and they have to only do one-on-one meetings right now. And the managers don't even know who's getting laid off, and a lot of long time, like 10+ year like veterans of Oracle are being just like tapped on the shoulder randomly and asked to come to a conference room and being laid off right now. So I think it's I don't know how that affects their cloud or anything else like that, but you just happen to mention Oracle, and I read it. I read it, and I read.
You'd have to wonder.
You'd
have to wonder how that affects
morning.
customer support.
Yeah, I guess it depends who they're laying off, right? But it's a little scary times right now, I guess, over there from what I've heard.
Yeah, wow, that doesn't sound like it bodes well for it. Ralph, what made you ask the question?
Oh, I don't know if I'm at liberty to discuss the reason, but
Okay,
use your imagination.
makes sense. All right, let's see here. What other questions do we have queued up here?
We did have a long discussion this morning about the quality of VMs and things like that.
Question on the quality of VMs?
Of cloud VMs,
Okay.
virtual machines.
Any more, pointed question on that?
No. This is just a comment.
Okay. Yeah, don't have anything to add to that. Any other questions? Let me check the Slack channel, see if we got anything in there. Otherwise, we can always end this a little bit early. All right. Well, in that case, why don't we give everyone back a few minutes of your day today? I'm on vacation technically, so I wouldn't mind that. Thanks everyone for jumping on the call this week and asking your questions and contributing answers. I think we got a few good ideas, especially on figuring out the Terraform version there and how to name your accounts and so forth. So if you haven't yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse and subscribe. That helps us out a great bit. If you haven't connected with me on LinkedIn, just head over to linkedin.com/in/Osterman and add me. I'd love to connect with you. And if you're interested in working with Cloud Posse at some point in the future, just connect with me at cloudposse.com/quiz. Fill out a few quick scoping questions, and you'll get an opportunity to book a call with me directly. I look forward to talking with you soon. See you all next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.